Hi everyone, in today's video we're going to have a look at a little introduction to Fusion 360. So first of all, why do we use Fusion 360 in college? So it's cloud-based, which means that you can do your work from home or from college really easily. You can access your files no matter where you are, so you don't need to worry about you've left work on college computers or you've left it at home computers. It's always accessible. You get a free educational license while you are studying at college. So the best way to do that is to take a photograph of your college ID and upload it onto the Autodesk website, and that proves that you are a student. And then they will give you an educational license for a year, and then you can update it again the following year. It is really easy to export to a DXF file, which is what we can use for our laser cutter. It's also really easy to export to an STL file, which is what you can use for 3D printing. You can do some good quality rendering in Fusion. There are other packages that do rendering better, so things like Blender. But for what we need, really, unless you are really going to get into it, the rendering that is in Fusion is absolutely fine. There is a really good, really friendly user interface, so the layout of it all is nice and simple. And there's lots of online support, so there's loads of video tutorials on YouTube. There's lots of forums. On the website, there's a forum that it's a lot of good problem solving. So there's a lot of support that you can get with Fusion. So what we're going to cover in this project, so we're going to break it down into 4 parts. So the first bit will be a little introduction to Fusion. We'll cover the basics of sketching, modelling, use of constraints, adding materials. So we'll look at the basics of the user interface, how to set up preferences, so things like grid layouts, unit of measurements, things like that. The basics of sketching, how do you add measurements, what are constraints and how do you add them, what the extrude command is and what it can be used for, using pattern, particularly pattern on a path, and then adding fillets. The second part rather, we will look at refining your model, making it part of a scene that's more realistic, adding things like decals to make it look more realistic, copying multiple parts, using the move tool. The third part, we will set up the scene for rendering, and then we're going to jump between the rendering and the modeling workspaces. So we'll look at the basics of rendering, we'll look at bringing in different types of files for decals. We'll look at giving your model context in terms of the design. So when you're setting up a scene, how do you emphasize your model? How do you make it stand out, make it look really good? The use of offset planes, the use of split bodies and combine tools, and then the draft command as well. Then the final part will be the final rendering and how to export it to be your model to be 3D printed. So we'll finish off your model and your scenery. We'll set it up for high quality rendering, and then the last bit, which is nice and simple, is for the original model that we've made. I'll show you how to set it up as an STL file, so you can then send it to a 3D printer if that's what you end up wanting to do with it. So there are also some other really good sources of tutorials out there, particularly on YouTube. 2 that I have found really helpful. The first one is Product Design Online. If you just search that on YouTube, you'll find this channel. Now, this is how I learned. He's got a fantastic amount of tutorials. He's got Learn Fusion 360 in 30 days. So all those videos are about 10-15 minutes long, and they are excellent. The other one is another one on YouTube called Brad Tallis. Now, his videos are a little bit more advanced. They tend to be bigger projects. So once you've got the basics down, he would be another fantastic one to have a look at. And then the final thing, just to talk about the kind of equipment I use for CAD software, because some people get into it a lot and have really high-end spec machinery. You don't really need that. So the laptop I've got is just a standard work laptop that has been given to me by college. It's not overly powerful. It does the job absolutely fine. Um, the only thing it's slow with is rendering. So when I rendered the final model for what this project is, it took about half an hour, 40 minutes. But everything else is absolutely fine. You can get much more powerful, better or faster laptops, particularly if you're into like your gaming and things like that. But they do cost a lot of money, and if it's just for college work, it's probably not worth it. But if it's something you need to use a lot later, then it probably is worth the investment a little bit. And then I've got a gaming mouse, so with programmable buttons on it. So the reason being, one, it's comfortable to use for a prolonged amount of time because I do spend quite a bit of time with CAD modeling, and using a basic mouse does hurt your hand a little bit. The extra programmable buttons make workflow a little bit faster. So basically, with some of the buttons, I can assign certain jobs to them, so I can flick through work a lot easier. And also, look at it, isn't it pretty? Look at all those colours. Okay, so once you open up Fusion, you'll get this screen. Now, depending on what version of Fusion you're using, if you've got a much more modern version, depends how old this video is when you're watching it, but as of February 2021, this is the layout of it. They do tend to update it every 3 to 4 weeks, so little things do change over time. So don't worry if you're looking at it and there's some things are slightly in different places. So at the top, on the right hand side, you will see first of all is your name will appear there when you have got your educational account sorted out. If there it occasionally if it's starting to run a little bit slowly, over here to like job status and things like that, it may be that it's doing its update. So when you tend to open it, it will start to do its update. And a little icon will appear there just to let you know that it's doing it. If it tends, I found when it's being slow, it's normally because an update is happening. So the best thing is let that happen, close Fusion again, reopen it, and then it will say update is completed. Then on the screen itself, as you see at the minute, the standard that I've got is I've got loads of grid lines on there. You can edit that if you want to. So down at the bottom, you will find these options here. So you've got viewpoints. That means I can basically have a look around. So what this is doing now is showing isometric top, side and bottom. So I don't want to have that on, so I'm going to turn that off. So let's go to single view so I can go back to my original view. If I want to have the grid off, I can turn it off that way. Some people prefer to do that if they wish to. And snap to grid, so if I want to have that on or off, depending if I'm working what I'm drawing, if I want my lines to snap onto the grid, I can turn that on and off as well. I'll leave it on for now. Now, these ones you won't be able to see what it does because I've not got anything actually drawn on the screen yet. But you can change things like the visual style of how the thing will actually look when you're drawing it. And then you can environment, you can change. So at the minute it's photo booth. You could change it to darker if you wish to. It is a case of just what do you prefer. So you can see what they all do. I personally do like the photo booth one, so I'm going to stick with that one. And then the other options that you've got here are to do with zooming in and out and panning and that sort of thing. So this is where having a decent mouse helps. So obviously to zoom in and out, what you can do is use your scroll wheel to zoom in and zoom out. If you click in the scroll wheel, you can also pan your screen around like that. Then at the top right, just down on the screen, you've got your view cube. So that view cube will let you rotate the whole thing around. You can go to 2D views if you want, just click on the side and it will show you 2D. And then on that, you can then click on the arrows, it will rotate it around. And if at any point you want to reset what you've done, just click on the home icon and it will reset back to normal again. Then on the left hand side, you got your document settings here. If you click on this little arrow to get the drop down menu, at the minute we're in millimeters. Okay, we're in the UK, we use the metric system, so it should automatically go to millimeters for you. If you're doing any tutorials from anyone in America, there's a good chance they'll be in inches, so just make sure when you're doing that sometimes, because I've done that before when I'm following a tutorial and there turns out they're in inches and I've not realised about until a little bit through it. It gets a little bit irritating. You can change that quite easily, so just hold down and then go to this icon here, click, and then this little menu will appear. So I've got millimeters. You can have centimeters, meters, inches, or feet if you wish to as well, but we will stick to millimeters for this. And then that is the basics of what we're doing. The next thing as well, it's always a good idea to, once you start, is save what you've done, like save your file straight away. Okay, because then what will happen is it will enable autosave, so constantly as you're working it will keep saving. So what we're going to have a go at doing for the first part is just modelling a Lego block. So this is the drawing I'm going to reference. I'll put a copy of this drawing in the description of the video as well for you, so it should have all the measurements as we're going through it, and I'll talk through it as we're doing it as well, but just in case you want to do it at a later date. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to just save, and I'm going to go to learning and I'll just type in okay, so that is now enabled autosave. So everything you do starts with sketches, really. That's the best way of looking at it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up here and click Create Sketch. And it's going to ask me to select a plane. Now, you can't just draw in the middle of in thin air. Okay, you need to draw onto something. So for now, we need to draw on a plane. Now think of a plane as like a piece of paper. We can do it on the side, front, or on the floor. Okay, so I'm going to click on the bottom like that, and it will rearrange the page so that we're looking straight down on it. Now that we're in the sketch menu, our menu at the top has changed completely. So we've got loads and loads of different options. Okay, so I'm going to be flicking backwards and forwards from this drawing. So we're going to start off with a nice simple 2D drawing. So we're going to start off with a rectangle. So the overall size of this is 30.8 and 40.8. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rectangle and I'm going to move it around. Now I can put the measurements in exactly how I want, like this. So I could do 30.8 and then I forgot what the other one was, so let's go back. 14.8. So let's start that again. So 14.8, and then what I can do is I hit tab and it'll jump to the other one, and then I can go 30.8 and hit enter. Okay, so when it goes black, that means it's fully constrained. You've got measurements in there and it's done that way. Just to show you another way of doing that, I'm just going to delete that. I'm just going to do the same again. I'm just going to draw a rectangle, but I'm not going to bother putting measurements in. Okay, so what I can do now, I can put measurements on retroactively. Now at the top here, there's a sketch dimension tool, or if you hit D on your keyboard, click on the line, and it comes up with the little dimensions one, so we can put in what we want. So I'm going to do 14.8. I'm going to double check I was right there. Yeah, and then I'm going to do same again, dimension 30.8. Hit enter. So there's two ways of doing it really. You can do the measurements exactly as you're going, or some people like to do the rough shape first and then refine it with the exact measurements afterwards. That's the way I tend to do it. I think it's a little bit easier. I get a rough idea first, then I put the exact measurements in as I'm going. So that's all we're going to do for now. I'm just going to then finish sketch at the top. I'm just going to rotate, and you can see all I've done is just draw a little rectangle. So we're going to turn that into a 3D shape now. So we need to see how thick this is going to be. So it's going to be 9.1. Okay, so to make that 3D, I need to do something called an extrude. So on the create menu, I've got extrude here, or if I go to drop down, extrude, or if you see here as well, there's an E next to extrude. That means there's a keyboard shortcut for it. So if I hit E, and then I can drag up, I can start to make that 3D. Now, I've forgotten what that was because my memory is terrible. 9.1. Now, because I've just jumped out of that, it's already done it for me, but I need to, that's not going to be exactly right. So down at the bottom here in my history, I can right click and I can go on edit feature. I can change that to 9.1 and hit enter. So that is now done. So far we've done, so we draw a rectangle nice and simple, and then we've extruded it. So now we'll do our little bobbly bits that make it an actual Lego block. So now I'm going to go and create a sketch. Now that we've got an object, we still need to draw on a plane or a surface, but I can now click on a surface of a shape that I've got. So I'm going to click on that surface, and now again it rearranges my page so that I can draw on it. So I'm just going to get two circles, and I'm not going to bother putting exact measurements in there yet. I'm just going to draw them like that. So now I'm going to have a look at the measurements here. So I have said on here, so the diameter, because that's what that symbol there is, of 4.6. So I'm going to hit D for dimension on my keyboard, click on this circle, type 4.6 and hit enter. So that's the right size. Now I could do exactly the same thing to that one, or what we're going to use quite a lot of in this video is constraints, which are on this menu up here. So these are really, really useful for making like everything equal, make everything match up. So you'll see what I mean in a second. So I'm going to click on equal. So I want this circle here to be equal to that circle. All right. So what that means here now is if I change this measurement to 9, they both get bigger. Okay. So I'll put that back to 4.6. So the reason I didn't do the measurement for both. So now basically, if I'd want to change all of them at once, I could just change one and it will do them all at the same time. Okay, so then they need to be lined up. So what I'm going to do is do horizontal, vertical. In fact, just to make it really obvious what's happening, so I'm going to move it to the side a little bit. What I want is this circle needs to be horizontal, vertical with that one, and it matches it so they're exactly in line together. So next measurements we want, so it needs to be 3.9 away from the edge. So what we're going to do, we're going to go dimension, click here, click on the edge, say 3.9, hit enter, and it moves them both. I'll do the same again, click there and there. It needs to be 3.9, like that. And you'll see that that circle now is going black. That means it's fully constrained. So I'm going to do the same for this edge here. So I could again type 3.9, or what I could do, I can click on that measurement, the 3.9 that I've already got, and it automatically will reference that measurement. So I'm going to hit enter, and it's going to stay in place. So now I am done with that sketch as well. So again, I'm going to hit finish sketch. So we need to make that 3D, so we're going to use extrude. So I'm going to just check the height, so 1.5. So I'm going to hit E on my keyboard. I'm then going to highlight both of those circles, and then 3.9. That is absolutely the wrong number. What did I say? 1.5, sorry. So I'm going to go back and edit that and change that to 1.5. So let's do 1.5. There you go, that looks much better. So obviously we need to have multiple bobbly bits, whatever the technical term may be for the Lego blocks. I could just draw each circle out individually, but that would take time, and there are tools built into Fusion that will do a lot of the work for us. So what we're going to do is create a pattern. So we're going to go to create and go to pattern, and I want rectangular pattern. So I'll get this menu. Now type, so we want to do features, because I want to pattern the extrude, and the extrude is a feature. So I'm going to click on it, and you see it makes them blue. Now the direction is just saying, okay, which way do you want to pattern them? So I'm just going to click on any one of these lines here, because it'll just show the way that I want to go. And if I just drag this arrow here, you'll see what happens. It's starting to repeat what I've done. So I need to have 4 rows of them. And then the distance, so let's see what the distance needs to be. So the distance from center to center for those is 24. So let's just go quickly and edit that. And the distance will be okay, and I'm going to just have a look. And that's not quite right because the distance there is not right. So let's just go back. I'll do 23. And there we go. So that is that bit done. So rather than, basically we saved ourselves some extra steps there. Rather than drawing each one out individually, we've just done it that way instead. So what we'll then do is we need to round these edges off. So for that, we're going to modify what we've done. So under the modify menu, we've got fillet. Again, there's a shortcut key F. So I'm going to hit F. I'm going to click on the wrong piece. So I'm going to hit escape. I'm going to click on the surface. I'm going to hit fillet, and what I'm going to do, so the fillet is 0.2 millimeters. So I'm going to do that again. I'm going to click and say 0.2. So you see that it rounds the edges off, but I don't want to just fillet one. I want to fillet all of them. So I'm going to hold down Control with my keyboard and then click on all the other ones as well. And at the minute, nothing's happening, it's just selecting them. But once I finish clicking, and I let go of Control, you'll see it's filleted all of them at the same time. And then I'll hit OK, like that. So next thing we're going to do is we're going to hollow out, because obviously Lego bricks are hollow. So the wall thickness is 1.49. So we're going to remember that this time, hopefully. So I'm going to flip it upside down. I'm going to use the shell command because I want to shell out what I've done. So I'm going to click on the edge and I'm going to just drag the arrow out so you can see what happens. Now I'm going to type in 1.49 and hit enter. And you can see we've now got our hollow Lego brick. Now obviously we still got some work to do, but at the minute we're making some progress. So next thing we're going to have a look at doing is making these pieces here that allow the blocks to actually connect together. So what we're going to do to make our lives a lot easier again, so we're going to start a sketch on this surface here. And then I'm going to flip it back over again. So we're going to, because I want to reference this model here already, because what will happen, those three blocks, the three bits that stick out basically go in between each set of four blocks, bobbly bits, and that's how it all fits together. So I'm going to reference those so we know it's exactly in line. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go to create and project. Or again, there's P, there's a keyboard shortcut, P for project. So I'm going to hit P on my keyboard and I'm just going to click each one of these circles, and then I'm going to hit OK, and I'm going to go over, and all that's happened is it is literally just done an outline of where those circles are, because that means that I can reference them exactly where I want them to be. So now I'm going to draw 3 circles. I'm purposely going to do them a little bit off, and I'm not going to put the measurements in. Okay, so now what I'm going to do, I'm going to use some more constraints. So I'm going to use tangent. So I want this circle to be tangent to that one. Again, I want it to be tangent to that one. And that one. And you see that it goes black because it's fully constrained. So I'm going to do the same to this circle. So again, I want it to be tangent to that. And that one. And that one. So that one I've actually referenced the wrong one there. So I should have done the other line. So what I'm going to do is just delete that. Let's go back again and say tangent to there. And there you go, that is much better. And same again, I want this tangent to this circle, to this circle, and to this circle. So I didn't need to constrain to all 4 circles, because once you've done 3, it knows exactly the size that it needs to be. Okay, so next, obviously, we need to make it a little bit hollow. So they are 1mm thick, so you can see it's 6.7 and then 5.7. So I could draw another circle on the inside, or what I could do is do offset, click on that circle, and at the minute that's on plus, but if I move it inside, you see it goes to minus, so I'm going to go -1. And then I'm going to hit OK, and then I'm going to do the same again, so I'm going to go -1, and then same again, let's do hit enter, and then same again, go on offset, and go to -1, like that. So all that's to do, I'm going to finish sketch, I'm going to hit E on my keyboard for extrude, I'm going to select these 3 pieces, and I'm going to start to drag out so you can see how big they're going to be. Now, I don't know exactly how far they need to go. All I know is it needs to match up to this edge. So what I'm going to do is click on this edge, and straight away it snaps to exactly where it needs to go. And I'm going to hit OK. So what we've got now is our pieces. So we've got our bubbly bits on the top, we've got our bits underneath that will match up with it. Last thing to do to just get the model itself actually done is to just finish off filleting everything else. So if we have a look at our drawing, all fillets on the outside are 0.5. So that's the last thing we're going to do now. So I'm going to go to fillet. So I'm going to hit F on my keyboard. I'm going to select all these edges. Making sure I'm rotating my model around as I'm going. And type in 0.5. And you'll see that that's rounded off all of my edges. I'm going to hit OK. Okay, so what we've done, so this is the end of the first part of the mini project that we've got going on our Lego block. So we'll stop for a second now before we move on to the second part. So if you were just looking how to do basic modeling, this is what we've covered. So what we've covered so far is the basics of sketching, adding dimensions, using constraints, how to extrude things, and then fillets and projecting. So the next thing we're going to look at then is start to add details and things like that. So what we're going to do then, so we're going to modify, and then under modify, we're going to go to appearance, or again, there's a keyboard shortcut, letter A. So I'm going to click on A. And then, so Lego blocks obviously are made from plastic. So we're going to just make this menu a little bit bigger, if I can stretch it out. There we go. So let's go to plastic, and let's go to ABS. Now you'll find there is a huge amount of materials already built into Fusion for you. So we're going to ABS, I'm just going to drag it over. But I don't want it to be white, so I'm going to double click on it. I'm going to change the colour. So let's see what colour. Let's go like that, and done. Okay, so we've got our first Lego block done. Now what we're going to look at is obviously no one just has one Lego block, okay? And we want to show off the modeling skills of one Lego block, but we want to show multiple to make it look, give it more context in terms of when we do our final render and hand in our work. And if you were to present something to, say, a client, you wouldn't just hand in like a single thing. You'd want to show it in the context of how it would be used. So more likely than not, you would have multiple parts. So I'm going to go to my left-hand menu to where bodies are. I'm going to click on that body. I'm going to right-click. I'm going to go on copy. Then I'm going to right click and click on paste. Now at the minute it doesn't look like anything's happened because it's just copied and pasted it right over the old piece that was already there. Okay, all you can see is I've got these arrows. So if I click on these arrows now, you'll see that there is another piece. It was just directly underneath it. Okay, so I'm just going to move that out of the way. And then I'm going to do this a couple of times, and I'm going to just start to arrange them, because the idea being that I just want to show off a few different parts, so you can just see it from all different angles, just to show off all different parts and show that it's got a little bit of context to it. So I'm just going to move things around. Let's go there. In fact, this one, what I might do is rotate it. So if I click on this here, so I'll rotate it so it's upside down. And then because we've put some work into the bottom of it, we want to show off what the bottom looks like. And then I might rotate it around, make it look a little bit like it's just been thrown out of a toy chest. And then we'll do the same again. Let's copy. Now how you arrange it is completely up to you. I won't do loads, but I'm going to do a few just to sort of show off like how it would work. And then, so obviously Lego blocks a lot of the time are stacked on one another. So let's stack a few so you can see how they would work. Let's bring that over there. I find when you're moving things, the best way to do it is to do it in the 2D view, so it's easier for you to gauge what you're doing. I'm going to hit on OK. I'm going to do a couple more, I think. So let's go on copy, paste. This time let's rotate this round. So you can, as well as you see here, put in exact measurements if you wish to. So I'm going to type in 90. And then let's bring this around. And all I'm trying to do is just sort of make it look like it's a set of Lego that's just been used or is out to be used. I might do a couple more just to emphasize the point a little bit. Let's make sure they line up so it looks like it's like leaning on something. So that's so this is probably the fiddliest part of all of it, really, is when you're trying to move things around in 3D. It's a little bit hard sometimes to judge. Just means you've got to rotate your screen around a little bit just to make it look right. So then I'm going to go, okay. So we'll stick at that. I think that looks okay. So we've got a few different pieces. See how it goes together. So now they're all the same colour. Now, really, you have like Lego blocks. You have loads and loads of different colours. So let's try. I'm going to go A for appearance. I'm going to drag it over. I'm going to change all of the colours. So I'm just going to do just a range of different light colours. Again, just to try and make it look a little bit more realistic to how they would be in reality. Okay, and then we're going to hit closed. So now we've got 6 blocks, different colours. So what we're going to do now is we're going to start to turn those into components. So what we should have done really is we just started a new component and then started from there. But I wanted to show you how to do it this way first, and then from now on we're going to start looking at components. So if each one of those bodies is a different Lego block. If I click on the eye, you can hide them. But what I'm going to do, I'm going to click on it. I'm going to right click and go create component from body. And it's going to go down here. So I'm just going to do the same to all of these, create component from body. Now the reason I'm doing this, it's just good practice to have them as components. Because we're doing a single piece, it doesn't really matter. If you were going to do a more complex part, where there's moving parts that are joined together, it's important that they'd all be separate components. So for now, it's not completely necessary, but it will just be good practice to do it. So I've got components there, but component 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 doesn't really tell me what it is. So I'm going to change the name. So I'm just going to click, call it block 1, call it block 2, block 3, block 4, block 5, and block 6. Okay, so at the minute that's not looking too bad. And what you can do, and once you start to get things together, it's a good idea to jump between the design and the render workspace to see how it's going to look. So at the minute you can see looks okay. It's sort of like grey in the middle of nowhere, which is why we'll build a scene up a bit later on. But I said they're a little bit too clean, a bit too shiny. Now obviously this is a children's toy, and they don't tend to stay clean for very long. They tend to get dirt, smudges, dents, those sort of things. So we can insert that information on there as well. So if you go online, you can have a look and find a PNG file. Now this is a good website I found simply because you don't need to sign up for something. Some of these websites mean you had to try and register before you could download things, which gets a little bit annoying. So I'm just going to type in dirt. And the reason we want a PNG is because we don't want the background to anything. So I'm going to click on the one that I want. I'm going to go to download. I am not a robot. Okay, so that's downloaded nice and quickly. So then what we're going to do, go to insert up here, go to decal, go to insert from my computer, and I'll go to my downloads, and I'm going to double click, and it's now selected. So I need to pick a surface for it to be on. So I'll click on this one first, and I'll zoom in. You can see what happened is the dirt has arrived like on the actual body of what I've made. Now at the minute, if you can see, it's wrapping around the edge a little bit. So if I move it around, you see it's starting to wrap around. That works sometimes, but I do find occasionally it tends to glitch out a little bit. So that's because we've got chain faces selected there. So I'm going to click on turn chain faces off, and it's just going to stick on this one surface. So I'm going to just make it bigger, like that, and hit OK. And you'll see that it's got the effect that it's just sort of like dirty, it's been used. And that's what makes your models look a lot more realistic. So I'm going to spend a bit of time now just doing the same to all the surfaces that would be seen. Okay, so I think that'll do. That's all the surfaces pretty much are going to be seen in terms of the render. So you can see that there's just little bits, just these little bits of detail, just make it look like it's a little bit more realistic and not too clean. So when you go back into the render, you can see they do turn up. So again, it just makes it look that a little bit more how it would in reality. So that's the end really of the second part of the project. So the first part obviously was looking at making our 3D model, looking at then using constraints, sketches, extruding, those sort of things. So part two was adding appearances, adding materials to it, and then adding some decals to make it look more realistic. So the next part we're going to have a look at is, so this really, if we were just going to make our model and be done with it, we could be finished. The whole thing we're going to look at for the next two parts is looking at how to just give it all again more context, make it look more realistic, and if you're going to do like a final render, how I had in a final submission of work, you can see how it would all work in situ. So one thing I had a look at, I thought, what else could we add into it? So I had a look and thought, okay, Lego, that's children's toy, so probably some sort of toy chest. Okay, so I quite like the idea of like some of these treasure chest style ones. So I'm going to go into here, and before I did my bodies first, and then I created components. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start a component from scratch. So I'm going to right click at the top and go on new component, and then I'm going to call that toy chest and hit enter. So what you'll see now on the left hand side, toy chest has appeared and there's a dot next to it, which means it's that active component. So that means what I'm doing is going to appear in here. Okay, so I'm going to go on sketch and I'm going to go on the side plane. Now at the minute I can't read it or reach it rather because my models are in the way. But if I hold down the left key of my mouse, I can go and I can click it that way. That will let you pierce through anything that you've got. Now I've realised, of course, I need to move this model up a little bit. That's clearly going to be going through the floor a little bit later. So I'm just going to make a little toy chest. So I'm just going to use the 2-point rectangle. I'm going to... Now, I'm not going to be as precise with these. This is just to give it a bit of background detail. If this whole video or this whole project was about designing a toy chest, obviously I would then do more detail and exact measurements, but this is simply just to add some background to what we're doing. So then I'm going to go to circle. Now I don't want a center diameter circle. I'm going to go to circle and go 2-point circle, because that'll let us click on this point, go across and click to that point. Now there's excess lines there, so I want to trim those off. So if I go to modify and trim, or T, keyboard shortcut, so I'm going to hit T, that'll let me get rid of those. I'm going to hit finished. Just quickly, while I've noticed it, I am just going to move this block because it's going to irritate me otherwise. So I'm going to click on move. That just needs to come up, doesn't it? Like that. To make sure it's in the right place. Like that. Okay, that's better. Okay, so I've drawn my chest. So you can see now my sketches have appeared there. So I'm going to click E on my keyboard for extrude. I'm going to pull it out and see how big really do I think this toy chest should be. Maybe a little bit bigger. Like that. And hit OK. So now you can see under toy chest, my body has appeared there. So at the minute, that's just a solid piece. We need to actually give it a little bit more detail. So first of all, let's make the actual lid and make it open. So I'm going to click on construct on the top menu. I'm going to go to offset plane, and I'm going to click on the bottom of this chest, and that'll do it. Give me a little arrow that I can drag up on this plane. Now I'm going to use this plane as a tool to cut something in half, not quite in half, but cut it into separate pieces. So then I'm going to go on OK. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to split body. So I'm going to modify and split body. Now keep an eye on the left hand side under body. So I've got body 1 there, but check what happens in a second. So body to split, this big body here, I want to split that in apart. Splitting tool, I want to use this offset plane. And when I zoom in, you'll see it's made this little red mark. That's basically saying, right, this body is going to be cut around that. I'm going to hit OK. And you'll see that 2 bodies have now appeared. Okay? Because it's now been cut. So I can get rid of that offset plane. So I can go onto construct here and hide it. I don't need that anymore. So let's move it around, make it a little bit more realistic. So let's click on the lid. So that's not the lid, that is the lid. So let's click on it and move. So I'm going to open it on a hinge, but I want the hinge on the other side. So I can change where the pivot point will be. So I'm going to go to the menu here, set pivot, click on set pivot, and it will let me choose where that pivot point will be. So I'm going to click on this point there, and then go back to done. So now I can move this little sliding scale and open it up like that. I'm going to hit OK. So again, it's still a solid piece, so it's not quite looking right. So let's shell it out like we do with our Lego block. So let's click and let's do maybe 2 mil. Hit OK. Let's do the same again. Let's click on this, type in 2 and hit OK. So I do need to join those back together again. Now, like I said before, if we were going to make this whole model about making this toy chest, I'd have to be a lot more accurate. I'd make some hinges to it so it would actually work. But because it's not going to be at the focal point of our drawing, it's just meant to be in the background. So I'm just going to move this a second. The whole reason I'm moving it now is because I want to join it back together again, and they need to intersect a little bit. So you see there, just intersect a tiny little bit. Go on OK. Like that. Now again, keep an eye on where it says I've still got body 1, body 2, but I'm going to combine them. So I'm going to modify and combine. Target body, this one. What do I want to combine it with? This one. Make sure it's on join and hit OK. And you see now I've just got one body again. So I'm going to move it so it's not really, really square. So let's just have a look. Let's rotate it around a little bit. Let's move it out of the way. Something like that. I think that looks nice. Okay, so let's add some materials to it. So again, we're going to go to A for appearance. So I think we're probably going to have a wooden toy chest of some kind. So let's have a look what we've got. So where are we for woods? Let's have a look at something like pine. That's nice and light. Very good. Okay. So I might want to add some decals. So if we had a look on here, obviously we've got some little details of animals and things like that. Now I have already downloaded some animal decals from the same website. I just typed in like animal, like cartoon animals. So let's insert those. So let's go to insert decal. And let's have a look. So I've got an animal there. So let's click. Now if it comes out the wrong way around, you can just rotate it nice and easy. So I want that. Let's change that to 90. Let's make it a bit bigger. It's a little bit too bright, I feel. So let's just turn the opacity down a little bit. Okay. Let's do a little bit more so it looks a bit busier. Do side. Let's do exactly the same on the other side. Oh, I didn't turn the opacity down on that. So remember, if ever you do submit and you want to undo or change what you've done, down at the bottom on your history, you can always go and edit these features really, really easily. So just because you've done something doesn't mean it's stuck ever. You can always go back and edit later. It's nice and easy that way. So go to decal. Oh, no, that was the wrong face. I did not mean to select that face. Move it into position. Like that. Okay, so we've not spent a lot of time on that. That's just there, so it's part of the background. And you see what happened here. Now, I didn't turn chain faces off on one of these things. So let's go back. So I think it was this first one. So let's go on edit feature. Yeah, so if I turn that off, you'll see now back in that chest again, you can't see those pieces. That's why it's always a good idea to turn chain faces off. Otherwise it tries to wrap around a bit. Okay, so now I'm going to go back to render. So we're going to jump back between render and normal workspace. So you can see a bit more context to it, but it's still sort of floating in the nothingness, isn't it? So let's have a look at giving it like a floor and walls. So that'd be nice and easy to do. So I'm going to go on, let's make a new component. So I'm going to right click at the top, new component. Let's call this scenery. So I'm going to click on create a sketch. Let's create on the bottom plane. And let's draw a big rectangle like that. Go on finish sketch. Go on extrude. And we'll go down because we don't want to interfere with what we've already done. I'm going to do the same on the side here. So I'm going to click on this side piece. No, I don't want that to join, so I'm going to extrude this in a second now. So I'm going to go on extrude. I'm going to go -3, or I'm going to go 3, sorry, not -3, because I want to make sure it's a new body, not joined, like that. And then let's do the same. Now I have made a little bit of a mistake there, but we'll sort that in a second. Let's go to create a sketch on that face, because actually then you won't see the mistake I've done. Let's just join from there to there and finish. Again, let's go extrude. Say new body. So in fact, it doesn't matter that I've got that little bit of overlap there. So you can see now I've got basically like a scene you might see in like a TV show kind of thing. So you can see like 2 walls and a floor. So we can extend those out a little bit if we want to, but again, we still want to make it look a little bit more realistic because at the minute they're just black. So we're going to add some more details to it. I didn't mean to do that there. So let's go back to the workspace. So for the flooring, so we'll go to appearance because I'm sure there are some fabrics in there. So let's go to leather and cloth, blue, so we can have a nice little carpet. Go done on there. Now I'm going to add a few more little details. So for example, I'm probably going to do a little skirting board just because I think it'll make it look a little bit more realistic. But you remember, you don't want to spend a huge amount of time on the scenery because it's not the focal point. It's just like an extra feature just to make it look more realistic. So I'm going to put this there. So then let's do extrude, and I'll come that out 5. Now you see at the minute it's trying to turn everything blue because it's joining. Once things join, if it's already got a material to it, it wants to make everything have that material. So I'm going to go to new body, and it'll not try and do that anymore. And then let's, at the minute that's just nice and flat, but we don't want that because skirting boards tend to have a little bit of a draft angle. So we go to modify, draft. Now where do I want to pivot it from? So from that surface, and I want to pivot this top bit. So let's bring it up and say 40 degrees. So what you can see, so you see it nice and easy from this angle here. So it's making it a little bit sloped, like a little mitre. So with the draft, the first thing it asks you to do is do the pull directions. That's basically what are you going to hinge it from. So I selected this face here. So that was done. Then what face do you want to do? So I picked the top piece, which meant that basically it used the hinge on the corner there. I'm going to hit OK. And then let's do the same on this wall here. Let's get a rectangle. Let's match it up. Like that. Go on finish. In fact, let me just move that a little bit actually. I'm just going to delete that. I made a bit of a mistake, so I'm just going to double click the whole thing to delete it and do that again because I want it to intersect, because I'm going to join it in a second. So I'm going to start again. Get my rectangle. There we go. And I'm going to go on finish sketch. So now I'm going to extrude it, and we did the same, the one we did before. I extruded that, and we did that 5. So let's do the same again. So let's go 5. Say new body, and then same again. Let's go on draft. So if watch again, so we're going to go to draft, pull direction. So where do you want to hinge it from? There. What piece do you actually want to pull? That one. Now it remembers the degrees we did from before, so it does 40. So I'm going to click OK. See how it joins nicely in the middle there. So I'm going to join those together. So I'm going to go to combine that piece and that piece. And done. So do better skirting boards. Let's add some appearance to that. And let's make that, let's paint that like a glossy white. So let's try that. Go and close. And then I think the last thing really would be to add some wallpaper to it. So I'm going to insert a decal. So I've already taken another decal. Now for this one, I didn't get a PNG because the reason we got a PNG for these ones is we didn't want a background to it. But all I searched for, and I'll put the files that I've used in the descriptions of the videos as well, so you've got that there. So I think it was this one. There you go. I literally, on Google, just typed in simple patterns for wallpaper, and it was a JPEG, and I'm just going to take it, I'm just going to drag it so it covers the whole area. Go on OK. And let's do the same on this one. Let's go insert decal. This wall here. Okay, So you can see I'm going to activate at the top at the minute. I've still got the scenery is the active component. I'm going to go to the very top and activate the whole thing. So you can see it all, and I'm going to zoom in a little bit. So you can see what's going on. And then if I'm going to jump back into render, zoom out a little bit. Like that. So you can see what we're going. So the main point of the whole exercise really was to show the Lego block. Now I'm going to change a little bit. That's intersecting a little bit. So let's just jump back and quickly move that. Let's go back to design. And that was that block. So let's just move that a smidge. Like that. Okay, so let's jump back to render. I think I was zoomed in too much there, so let's try that again. Go to design, render. So we spent most of our time was spent with the Lego block, making sure it's nice and accurate. And that obviously, for what we're doing, is the main emphasis of the project. So say we were designing a product or a piece of furniture. But we spent a little bit of time then adding some decals, which you can see, so that make it look a little bit more realistic. But then we did a little bit of scenery to give the whole idea of the design some context. But you can't really see a huge amount of detail in it, because obviously you don't want it to take away from the attention of what you've actually done. But you can see, so you can see a little bit of the background, and you can see the skirting board, see the toy chest. What I might do is copy and paste a few more of these blocks, have them scattered around a little bit more like that. So that, to me, then would be a finished first project. So we've done our modelling, we've added decals to it, we've made a scenery to it. So the last thing really would be to render it. Now, I'm not going to render it on video live the whole time because it took quite a bit of time to do it because, like I said, I've got a relatively basic laptop. But we're in the render workspace now. So you can do in-canvas render. So I'm going to click on in-canvas render, and you'll see what will happen in a second. It'll start to go fuzzy, and it'll start to get clearer as it gets a really nice quality picture from what I've done. I won't carry on with that. I'm going to stop that there, but I will at the very end show a picture of what the final render looks like. But that was a nice little introduction mini project to Fusion. If you're following this along from college, it probably takes 3-4 lessons, really, depending on how much detail you're going into it. I am planning on doing a few others of other little projects. If you've got any ideas or any questions or any particular shapes or things you're not quite sure how to model, please do let me know. You can contact me via Teams or via email, and I'll do my best to make another video for you. Okay, so the last thing we said we would do in this little project video was show you how to set everything up ready to 3D print. So actually we're done now. So in terms of modeling, we've made the actual model that we wanted to do in the first place. We set up our scene, we've rendered it, we've submitted it, we showed it to a client, whatever we were going to do with it. So now say we want to actually physically make a model of it. So what I'm going to do is find one of the blocks I want to do. Now it doesn't matter which one because they're all identical in this case. So let's just do block 1. So just because it's a little bit messy on the screen, I'm going to just click on it, and I'm going to right click and go on isolate, and all that will do is hide everything else, because in reality all I want to do is 3D print that one thing. I don't need to isolate it, it's just for the sake of this video and showing how much clearer it is, we'll do it this way. Then I'll go right click and I'll go on save as STL. You'll get this pop up here. Now I've never not used the main settings that I've done in here, I've never had a problem. I'll go on OK. I will save it as Lego block print. And then to show you what they'll look like, so I have Cura up. So I use an Ender 5 3D printer. So, and then you can see that clearly that our Lego block is ready in Slicer to 3D print. So just out of curiosity, let's see how long that will take to 3D print. So it says that will take about 19 minutes, shorter than I thought it would take. So what we've done, so that is project all the way from the beginning, all the way through to the very end. So modeling, sketching, modeling, rendering, all the way through to 3D printing. Hopefully you found some of that useful and interesting, and I will see you in the next video.